You know that feeling when you're in the middle of something incredibly important? Like you're compiling a report, analyzing a huge data set, or maybe you're just finally getting to the end of a movie you've been watching for 2 hours.
Oh, yeah, you're totally in the zone.
Right. And then you get that little pop-up on your screen, the one that says your operating system requires a critical update.
The dreaded update prompt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you assume it's routine, right? You click update, figuring, hey, I have time to go grab a cup of coffee.
Sure.
But when you sit back down, the screen is just black. The system has completely crashed. You are locked out of your own machine, and it's just this deeply frustrating feeling of helplessness.
Is the absolute worst.
But I want you, the listener, to scale that feeling up for a moment. Imagine you are the lead IT director for a global enterprise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. That exact same software update isn't just hitting your personal laptop.
Yep.
It is being pushed out to, like, 10,000 machines simultaneously.
That is a terrifying thought.
Right. We are talking about the terminals on hospital floors, servers processing financial trades, routing equipment for regional air traffic control.
Yeah, the stakes are completely different.
Exactly. If that system crashes, the fallout isn't a missed movie ending. Entire supply chains halt. Emergency services go dark. The world effectively stops.
And, the line separating a routine Tuesday afternoon from a catastrophic global outage is astonishingly thin.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. When you operate at an enterprise scale, you don't have the luxury of assuming an update will simply work. I mean, every single interaction with the infrastructure has to be treated like a potential detonation.
Which brings us perfectly to the core of what we are unpacking today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are looking at a stack of excerpts from a manual that, at first glance, seems like a fairly dry operational textbook.
It definitely looks like one.
Yeah, specifically, it's the CertMaster A plus Core 1 and Core 2 Module 22. But when you actually read through these procedures, you realize this isn't just a list of technical guidelines. This document is literally the secret playbook that keeps the digital and physical infrastructure of modern civilization from collapsing.
It really is.
We are going to translate these pages covering everything from change management and risk analysis to asset tracking and physical environmental controls into real-world survival strategies for navigating the modern tech landscape.
I love that framing.
And joining me to decode this massive operational ledger is our resident expert.
Thanks. I have to say, I find this specific source material endlessly fascinating.
Why is that?
Because if you strip away the technical jargon, what you're left with is basically a masterclass in human psychology.
Really? Psychology?
Yeah, psychology, risk mitigation, and just systemic paranoia. The authors of this manual are operating under the assumption that everything that can go wrong absolutely will go wrong.
Right.
And usually because a human being made a bad assumption.
Well, let's start right there with the human element, because if you look at the forensic analysis of major network outages over the last decade.
Yeah, it's almost always a human.
Exactly. The root cause is rarely some shadowy syndicate of hackers penetrating a firewall.
Right.
The most common way a stable system breaks is when an authorized, highly skilled technician tries to, improve it.
Which is so ironic.
Yeah.
But a system at rest tends to stay at rest, assuming no external hardware failures.
Sure.
The moment you introduce a variable, like deploying a new software patch, upgrading a router's firmware, or altering a database schema, you are introducing a vector for catastrophic failure.
And the manual tackles this head-on with the concept of change management.
Yes. The CertMaster material builds an entire operational framework around this reality. And the foundation of that framework is the request for change.
The RFC.
Yeah, the RFC.
Now, when I first read about the RFC in the source material, I pictured a simple ticketing system, like a digital suggestion box where a sysadmin just types in, hey, requesting permission to upgrade the main server.
If only it were that simple.
Right. Because the manual outlines a highly structured, almost forensic proposal. You have to document the project name, the specific requester, a granular description of the change, the business justification.
The potential systemic impact.
Yes. The exact proposed action and a rigid implementation schedule. It seems like an enormous amount of friction to put in front of a technician who just wants to push some code.
Well, that friction is entirely by design.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The RFC acts as a psychological forcing function.
A forcing function, okay.
Yeah, it forces the technician to stop viewing their task in isolation. They have to start calculating the ripple effects across the entire topology of the network.
It reminds me of applying for a building permit when you're renovating a house.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like if you decide you want an open concept kitchen, you can't just take a sledgehammer to a load-bearing wall on a Saturday morning.
Definitely not. Not if you want the roof to stay up.
Yeah. Exactly. You have to submit architectural blueprints to the city. You have to calculate the structural load, the electrical rerouting, the plumbing displacement.
Right, because everything is connected.
Yeah, you have to prove that knocking down that one wall isn't going to cause the second-story master bedroom to collapse into the living room.
The load-bearing wall is the perfect conceptual model for this.
Mm,
In enterprise IT infrastructure, everything is deeply interdependent.
right.
A technician might want to change a routing protocol on a core switch just to optimize traffic flow. To them, it's just a minor optimization.
Sure, just cleaning things up.
But that specific switch might be the sole pathway for the legacy database that processes the company's payroll.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So if the routing change drops packets or introduces even a little latency, payroll fails. Nobody gets paid.
Which is a massive business failure.
Exactly. The RFC demands that the technician map out that scope and impact beforehand, evaluating how this change affects other ongoing projects, the quarterly budget, and the operational schedule.
That makes a lot of sense. But the source material acknowledges that not all changes require a sledgehammer, though.
Right. It breaks modifications down into a very rigid hierarchy of risk.
Yeah, let's go through those. The baseline is what the text calls a standard or routine change.
So, standard changes are the low-risk, highly documented modifications. The text points to regular, scheduled patch installations or routine password resets.
Stuff they do every day.
Exactly. These are procedures that the IT department performs hundreds of times a month. The operational steps are locked in, and the historical data proves that the risk of a systemic failure is basically zero.
So they don't need a massive permit for those.
Right. Because they are routine, they bypass the heavy bureaucracy. They don't need a massive committee review every single time a user forgets their login credentials.
But the moment you deviate from the routine, you escalate to a minor change.
Yes.
The text defines this as introducing a moderate level of risk, but remaining relatively contained within a specific department or system.
Think about adding a new data field to an existing database table, or maybe adjusting the format of an automated financial report.
Or the text mentions deploying a new printer driver across a specific floor of an office building.
Perfect example. These actions carry risk. I mean, a bad printer driver can cause a localized spooler crash, but the blast radius is small.
The damage is contained.
Right. The manual dictates that these require approval, but usually just from a direct supervisor or department manager who can absorb that localized risk.
Okay, but here is where the manual introduces the real operational terror.
The third tier.
The normal or major change.
Yes, these are the load-bearing walls. We are talking about sweeping network redesigns, migrating massive data sets to new cloud environments,
Upgrading core servers.
or deploying entirely new enterprise resource planning software. The stakes are so high here that a single supervisor does not have the authority to sign off.
No, absolutely not. The RFC must be submitted to the CAB.
The Change Advisory Board. Yes. The Change Advisory Board is basically the Supreme Court of the IT infrastructure. The text defines it as the governing body that reviews, evaluates, and ultimately dictates the fate of any significant system alteration.
Now, I am going to aggressively push back on this concept.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because on paper, a change advisory board sounds like the ultimate corporate bottleneck.
A lot of engineers would agree with you.
Right. You have highly paid, highly skilled systems architects who understand the technology intimately. And when they find a critical optimization, they have to pause everything to go present a PowerPoint to a boardroom full of executives holding clipboards.
That is the stereotype, yes.
It sounds like a mechanism designed specifically to kill innovation and slow the company's agility to a crawl. I mean, if the engineering team knows how to execute the deployment, why are they waiting weeks for a committee to convene?
Like I said, that is the most common grievance voiced by engineering teams. But the manual provides a brilliant defense of the CAB.
Okay, how so?
The goal of the Change Advisory Board is not to stifle innovation. Their explicit mandate is to protect systemic stability while facilitating those necessary improvements.
But how do they do that without slowing everything down?
You have to look at the composition of the board. The text specifies that the CAB is not just IT management. It includes the technicians, the cybersecurity team, operations staff, and most importantly, non-technical stakeholders from the affected business departments.
See, that inclusion of non-technical staff is exactly what sounds so counterproductive. Why does the head of HR or the VP of sales need a veto over a database migration? They don't understand the routing protocols or the database schema.
Well, they don't need to understand the schema. They need to protect the business rhythm.
What do you mean by business rhythm?
Okay, consider a scenario where the engineering team wants to take the main customer relationship management database offline for a massive back-end upgrade.
The CRM system, okay.
Right. To the engineers, Friday afternoon at 4:00 p.m. is the perfect time. The technical staff is wrapping up, and they have the whole weekend to troubleshoot if things go wrong.
Makes a logical sense from an IT perspective.
It does. But the VP of sales on the CAB will immediately flag that Friday afternoon is the final day of the fiscal quarter.
Oh.
Yeah. The sales team is frantically trying to close millions of dollars in final contracts. If the CRM goes offline at 4:00 p.m. on that specific Friday, the company misses its quarterly revenue targets.
I see.
The technician understands the mechanics of the upgrade, but the CAB understands the context. They weigh the technical necessity against the business impact, the financial cost, and the operational timing.
Okay, that reframes it completely. The CAB isn't policing the code, they are policing the deployment environment.
Exactly.
They act as the synchronization mechanism between the silicon and the balance sheet. They approve, reject, or defer the RFC based on the holistic health of the company.
You got it. But the manual also recognizes that sometimes the environment dictates the timeline, which brings us to the fourth tier.
The emergency change.
Yes.
This is when the server is actively melting down, or there's an active ransomware intrusion spreading across the subnet.
In those scenarios, the luxury of deliberation evaporates. You cannot convene a cross-departmental CAB meeting when a threat actor is actively exfiltrating data.
No, you'd lose everything while trying to schedule a Zoom call.
Exactly. The change must be implemented immediately to stop the bleeding. The operational rule here is that the mitigation happens first, and the bureaucratic documentation happens retroactively to ensure the audit trail remains intact.
So fix it now, fill out the forms later.
Precisely.
Let's follow the timeline of a major change, assuming it's a normal change and the CAB has granted approval.
Okay.
The engineer has the green light. They are sitting at their terminal preparing to execute the deployment script. The source material emphasizes that approval is not a safety net.
Oh no. Approval just means you're allowed to take the risk.
Right. The ultimate safety net is the rollback plan.
Yes. Striking the execute key on a major configuration change is an incredibly tense moment. The manual makes it mandatory that you never initiate a major change without a verified, tested method to undo it.
It's essentially a mandatory time machine for the network.
That is exactly the function of a rollback plan. The text details the necessity of creating snapshot backups and establishing hard restore points immediately prior to the change.
So if things go sideways.
Right. If you push the new server upgrade and it unexpectedly corrupts the live database, you do not try to fix the new deployment on the fly while the business is bleeding revenue.
Because you might just make it worse.
And you're losing time. Instead, you trigger the contingency steps to instantly revert the system back to the exact architectural state it existed in 5 minutes before you started.
You never jump out of the aircraft unless you pack the parachute yourself and you know the ripcord works.
Great way to put it.
But the manual goes further than just automated backups. It introduces psychological safety nets, specifically peer review.
Because automation can only catch so much. Peer review requires a secondary, highly qualified technician to forensically audit your configuration before it goes live.
So a second set of eyes.
A very critical second set of eyes. They are checking the syntax of your scripts, verifying the access permissions, and auditing the security settings.
Because it's easy to miss your own typos.
Absolutely. A single missed character in a line of code can create a catastrophic memory leak. The peer review is designed to catch the blind spots created by a technician who's been staring at the same code for 3 weeks.
And the final hurdle before the change is considered successful is end-user acceptance.
Yes. The IT department cannot unilaterally declare victory just because the servers are green on their monitoring dashboard.
Right. The manual dictates that you must confirm the system actually functions for the people operating it.
Because what good is an optimized server if the accounting team can't open their spreadsheets?
Exactly. You have to document user satisfaction and verify that all business requirements outlined in the original RFC are genuinely met before that ticket can be closed.
It creates a closed loop of accountability. Safe, reversible, and verified implementation.
But all of this bureaucratic armor, The CAs, the peer reviews, the rollback plans relies on one massive assumption,
Which is?
that the IT department accurately understands the threats they are facing.
Yes.
Because you cannot calculate the risk of a change if you don't understand the disaster scenarios waiting in the wings. Which leads us directly into the manual's deep dive on risk analysis.
Right. Risk analysis is the engine that powers the Change Advisory Board.
Their mandate is to identify potential vulnerabilities before any implementation occurs, actively preventing downtime, data hemorrhage, and physical safety hazards.
And the core methodology is evaluating the severity of a potential event against the likelihood of it occurring.
The manual presents these risks through highly specific, almost cinematic visual scenarios. They read like the storyboards for an infrastructure disaster movie.
They really do. They don't pull any punches.
No, they don't. Let's break down the mechanics of these threats. The first is the classic environmental threat.
The natural disaster.
Yes. The text describes a scenario involving a massive hurricane, torrential flooding outside a ground floor office window, and mission-critical computers sitting on standard desks while a server rack is merely inches away from rising floodwaters.
It is a vivid representation of geographical vulnerability.
Yeah, water and electricity don't mix.
No, but hurricanes do not just bring water. They bring sustained power grid failures and catastrophic physical destruction to the facility itself. So the risk analysis here extends far beyond buying sandbags and moving servers to the second floor.
Because if the power grid in the entire city is destroyed for 3 weeks, a dry server is just as useless as a wet server.
Precisely. The mitigation strategy for this level of environmental threat relies on geographic redundancy.
Geographic redundancy, so putting stuff far away.
Yes, you implement active data center architectures.
What does that mean?
It means an off-site disaster recovery facility, located hundreds of miles inland, is mirroring your data in real time. When the primary facility loses connectivity, the traffic automatically routes to the secondary site.
Oh, wow.
The manual forces the infrastructure team to ask, is our continuity plan dependent on a single geographic location? Because if it is, a single hurricane can wipe out the company.
Right. Now, the second scenario shifts from external weather to internal catastrophe. The continuity risk.
This one is depicted as a severe facility fire.
Yeah, the imagery is stark. A server rack actively engulfed in flames, thick black smoke triggering the suppression alarms, and a technician sprinting out the exit door.
This scenario exposes the inherent tension between data continuity and human life safety.
How so?
Well, facility fires destroy critical systems, but the immediate non-negotiable protocol is human evacuation.
Right, you can't have people staying behind to turn off computers.
Exactly. You cannot design a system architecture that requires a human being to remain in a burning room to manually execute a graceful server shutdown.
Which fundamentally changes how you design the failover mechanisms.
Yes.
If the humans are running for their lives, the network has to be self-aware enough to save itself.
It has to detect the massive heat spikes, trigger the automated failovers to the offsite backups, and initiate emergency shutdowns before the hardware melts, all without human intervention.
And you also have to consider the physical mitigation within that room, right? I mean, you can't just use normal sprinklers.
Right. Data centers do not use traditional water sprinklers because water destroys the equipment just as effectively as the fire.
So what do they use?
They use clean agent gas suppression systems. These systems flood the room with chemicals to displace the oxygen and smother the fire.
Oh, wow. But that sounds dangerous for anyone still in the room.
It is. Those systems are incredibly loud and hazardous to humans, which reinforces the manual's absolute priority. When the alarm sounds, life safety supersedes asset protection. Get out of the room.
The third physical scenario is more insidious because it happens in an instant.
Power instability.
Yeah. The manual depicts an electrical storm, lightning striking outside, and raw voltage sparking out of a wall outlet directly into a routing switch and a server.
Electrical storms introduce massive volatility into the power grid. A sudden voltage surge can bypass standard power supplies and instantly fry the delicate silicon pathways inside network devices and storage arrays.
But it's not just the surge that's dangerous, right? It's the sudden absence of power.
That is often the more devastating outcome.
Because if a server is in the middle of writing a massive block of data to a database and the power instantly drops to zero, you don't just lose the work in progress.
No, you can corrupt the entire database architecture,
resulting in massive data loss through what's called a dirty shutdown.
Yes. To mitigate this, the manual lists rigorous hardware requirements. You need industrial-grade surge protection to clamp down and shunt those massive voltage spikes safely to the ground.
Sure, to stop the surge.
But more importantly, you require UPS systems, uninterruptible power supplies.
No, these aren't just those fancy power strips you buy at the hardware store, right?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
They're essentially massive banks of heavy-duty batteries sitting at the bottom of the server racks.
Okay, so they provide backup power.
They are the bridge over the abyss. When the main power grid fails, the UPS system detects the voltage drop in milliseconds and instantly switches the load to battery power. The servers never even register that the grid went down.
But a battery can't run a data center forever.
No, a UPS won't run a data center for days. It provides a highly specific window of time, usually just enough minutes for the automated systems to execute a clean, graceful shutdown of the databases.
Preventing the dirty shutdown.
Right. Or it buys enough time for the massive diesel backup generators on the roof to spool up and take over the electrical load.
Okay, this fourth physical scenario in the manual is kind of bizarre, but it highlights an often overlooked vulnerability.
The vehicle impact.
Yes. The text describes a sedan that has violently crashed through the glass storefront of an office building, completely destroying a desk housing critical computing equipment while emergency services wait outside.
It sounds like a freak accident, right?
It sounds like a movie scene.
But vehicle impacts are a surprisingly common threat vector for retail locations, branch offices, and edge computing environments.
Really?
Yeah. This scenario represents a dual threat. Massive facility damage, coupled with instant business interruption.
Well, yeah. If your primary point-of-sale server is sitting under a desk next to a plate glass window facing a busy intersection,
Your entire operational uptime is at the mercy of a distracted driver.
which forces a radical rethinking of physical placement and perimeter defense.
Exactly. This is why the MDF, the main distribution frame, or the primary server room, is almost always located deep within the interior of a building.
Surrounded by reinforced walls, far away from exterior glass.
Yes. It is why you see massive concrete bollards surrounding the perimeter of enterprise data centers. You're engineering physical space to protect digital assets.
But as dramatic as a car crashing through a window is, the manual dramatically pivots to a threat vector that is silent, bypasses the concrete bollards, and is statistically much more dangerous.
The human element.
Specifically the insider threat. The visual the manual provides is chilling. It depicts a corporate employee in a suit, sweating, nervously looking over his shoulder at a security camera, while he hurriedly stuffs a company laptop or tablet into his briefcase, right next to a physical folder stamped confidential.
This scenario keeps chief information security officers awake at night.
I can imagine.
We spend tens of millions of dollars on next-generation firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and encrypted VPNs to keep malicious external actors out of the network.
Could keep the hackers out.
Right. But all of that perimeter armor is completely useless if the threat actor already possesses a valid keycard, a legitimate username, and multi-factor authentication credentials.
Right, because the system thinks they belong there.
Exactly. An insider threat involves malicious or sometimes just grossly negligent actions executed by trusted employees who use their authorized access to harm the organization.
The text categorizes this as data theft, the unauthorized access, exposure, or physical removal of highly sensitive intellectual property. If a senior database administrator decides they're going to accept a job at a rival company, and on their last day, they quietly copy the entire proprietary client list onto a thumb drive and walk out the front door, no amount of UPS batteries or surge protectors will save you.
And that physical theft evolves into an even more sophisticated and devastating digital attack vector detailed in the text.
Which is?
The logic bomb.
Oh, the logic bomb. I have to say, that term sounds like a plot device in a cyber espionage thriller.
It really does. It is essentially a digital sleeper agent.
Sleeper agent. Okay, explain that.
The operational definition provided in the manual is highly precise. A logic bomb is a piece of malicious code covertly planted within a system by a trusted, authorized user.
Okay.
However, unlike a traditional virus that executes the moment it is introduced, a logic bomb is dormant.
It waits.
It is programmed to activate only when a highly specific set of conditions are met, usually a specific time and date or a specific trigger event within the system.
Okay, let's play out a hypothetical scenario based on this. Let's say I am a disgruntled systems architect.
Okay, you're disgruntled.
I maintain the core code for the company's financial infrastructure, and I suspect I'm going to be fired during an upcoming corporate restructuring.
A classic motive.
Right. So I could write a small, seemingly innocuous script, a logic bomb, and bury it deep within a routine software update.
And no one would notice because you're the architect.
Exactly. The script simply checks the company's Active Directory every morning. It says, if my specific username is ever deleted or deactivated from the employee database, begin a silent 30-day countdown.
Oh, that's nasty.
After 30 days, execute a command to permanently wipe the company's primary accounting databases and corrupt the backups.
That is the textbook manifestation of a software compromise via a logic bomb. And the sheer deviousness of it lies in the timeline.
Right, because by the time the 30-day countdown expires and the bomb detonates, causing catastrophic system damage,
The malicious actor has been gone from the company for a month.
and tracing it back is a nightmare because the code was written from an authorized terminal, using legitimate credentials, by someone whose literal job was to write code for those systems.
Yeah.
So how does the manual suggest mitigating an attack that comes from inside the house?
The defense against insider threats requires a fundamental shift in trust architecture. The manual emphasizes preventive controls that restrict autonomy.
What does that look like in practice?
You implement the principle of least privilege.
Least privilege, meaning you only get the access you absolutely need.
Exactly. No single employee, regardless of their rank, should have the unilateral system access required to destroy the entire network.
So you fragment the power.
Yes, you mandate separation of duties,
Yeah.
and you rely heavily on the peer reviews we discussed during the change management section.
Because it's hard to sneak a logic bomb past a peer review.
Right. A logic bomb is incredibly difficult to hide if every single line of code must be forensically audited by 2 other independent engineers before it can be pushed to the production environment.
You also implement rigorous monitoring, right?
Oh, absolutely. Monitoring of administrative accounts, watching for anomalous behavior like massive data downloads at 3:00 a.m.
Makes sense.
The overarching goal of all this risk analysis is to anticipate the failure points, whether they are hurricanes or rogue employees, and ensure the recovery mechanisms are fully operational before the disaster strikes.
But there is a massive logical gap here.
What's that?
You can build the most robust geographic failovers, you can implement draconian peer reviews, and you can install industrial surge protectors.
Yeah.
But you cannot protect your network if you do not know exactly what is connected to it.
That is very true.
You cannot secure a server against a logic bomb if you don't even know that server exists in your environment.
Which transitions us seamlessly into the foundational layer of all IT operations, inventory and asset management. Because ignorance of your own infrastructure is the ultimate vulnerability.
The manual poses a deceptively simple question here. What is an asset?
It seems obvious, right?
Yeah, because historically, if you asked an accountant, an asset was a tangible piece of hardware. A laptop, a desktop monitor, a router. Something physical that you could touch, inventory on a clipboard, and lock in a closet.
The source material aggressively updates that definition for the modern era.
Yeah, it does.
While physical assets, the tangible hardware components, are still critical, the manual explicitly expands the definition to include digital assets.
These are intangible resources that are just as vital and arguably much harder to track.
Much harder. Let's talk about the complexity of tracking digital assets, specifically virtual machines or VMs.
For those imagining a physical box, a VM is entirely software-defined.
Right. It is essentially a computer made of code running virtually inside a massive physical server.
So a single physical server could be hosting 50 different virtual machines simultaneously, each running its own operating system and performing a unique business function.
And this is where the tracking becomes a nightmare. Because virtual machines can be spun up by a developer in a matter of seconds to test a piece of code, and then just delete it an hour later. Or forgotten about.
Oh, I see.
If your inventory system is not constantly scanning and tracking these ephemeral digital assets, you develop massive blind spots. A forgotten VM left running on a server is an unpatched, unmonitored backdoor into your network, waiting for a threat actor to exploit it.
The manual also highlights software licenses as critical digital assets. This isn't just about security. It's about legal and financial compliance.
Right. When an enterprise purchases software, they're usually bound by strict vendor agreements regarding how many users can access it concurrently.
So managing those licenses is paramount.
Yes. If you purchase 500 licenses for a premium design software, but your lack of asset tracking allows 700 employees to install it on their company laptops,
You are in breach of contract.
you are in massive breach. Software vendors routinely perform aggressive compliance audits, and the financial penalties for overuse can run into the millions of dollars. Proper asset management prevents unauthorized use and eliminates the financial risk of lapsed or overdeployed licenses.
So how does an enterprise actually manage this? The manual outlines the requirements for what is essentially the grand ledger of IT, and the amount of granular detail required for a single asset is staggering.
It has to be exhaustive to be effective.
Hmm.
The foundational element is the asset name and a unique identification number.
The manual stresses the necessity of a rigid, standardized naming convention across the entire organization.
Yeah, you can't just have people naming computers Dave's laptop.
Right. The text provides a very specific visual example of the barcode labels used to anchor this tracking system.
It depicts a heavy-duty sticker designed to be affixed to the hardware.
The top features custom text, explicitly declaring ownership, like property of ACME Inc.
Below that is the machine-readable barcode.
And at the bottom is the alphanumeric identifier, combining a department prefix with the serialized number, such as BB001.
That barcode is the physical anchor for a massive digital record.
Once scanned, the ledger must reveal the manufacturer, the exact model number, and the technical specifications.
It must document the physical location, and not just the building, but the specific floor, the specific room, and the exact slot within a server rack.
It also records which employee or department is assigned responsibility for the device.
Yes.
And then the manual pivots to the financial realities of IT management.
This is where it gets interesting.
Right. The ledger must track the purchase date, the exact parameters of the warranty, the initial capital cost, and the ongoing depreciation value. Now, I have to question this approach.
Go ahead.
We have highly skilled network engineers whose primary function is to optimize data flow and configure complex cybersecurity defenses.
True.
Why does the manual insist that these technicians need to care about the financial depreciation schedules or the exact expiration date of a vendor warranty? Shouldn't the IT staff just focus on keeping the machines running and leave the spreadsheets to the finance department?
It is a common philosophical divide, but the manual strongly defends the integration of financial tracking into IT operations.
Why?
Because understanding the warranty status is not just an accounting exercise. It dictates the operational workflow of the technician.
How so?
Okay, suppose a core router begins experiencing hardware failures.
Okay.
The technician spends 12 hours troubleshooting, diagnosing the faulty silicon, and ultimately replacing the motherboard using expensive spare parts from the IT closet.
They fixed it. Good job.
But what if that router was fully covered under an active vendor service level agreement?
Oh.
Yeah, that technician just burned 12 hours of highly paid labor and thousands of dollars in proprietary parts. The vendor would have dispatched their own technician and replaced the unit for free.
So ignorance of the warranty literally burns the company's operating budget.
Exactly. Furthermore, ignorance can actively destroy the company's capital investment. If a technician opens the chassis of a $100,000 enterprise server to perform an unauthorized memory upgrade without verifying the warranty stipulations,
they might instantly void the vendor support contract.
Precisely. The text explicitly links asset management to cost savings, preventing accidental voiding through unauthorized work, and avoiding unnecessary replacement cycles.
Speaking of warranty stipulations, the manual includes a fascinating, highly specific trivia chart regarding how different manufacturers approach standard warranties.
Yes, specifically concerning hardware upgrades.
It highlights the philosophical differences between tech giants.
The warranty realities vary wildly depending on whose logo is on the chassis.
Right. The chart specifically asks.
Yes. It means they can confidently plan to purchase those specific brands, knowing they can crack them open 3 years later, double the RAM, extend the usable life of the hardware, and still maintain vendor support if the motherboard subsequently fails.
But the absence of certain brands on that safe-to-upgrade list is telling.
It is.
The chart implies that for manufacturers like Amazon, ASUS, Google, Microsoft, MSI, and Samsung, breaking that factory seal to perform a simple upgrade transfers the entire liability of the hardware onto the IT department.
Which profoundly influences enterprise purchasing decisions. And you track these assets using different methodologies depending on the scale of your operation.
Right. The text notes that a small startup might survive using a meticulously maintained spreadsheet.
Sure, when you only have 20 laptops.
As the company grows, they migrate to automated ticketing systems that track hardware assignments.
But for a global enterprise, spreadsheets and tickets are vastly insufficient. You must graduate to the CMDB.
The Configuration Management Database.
Yes. The CMDB is the central nervous system of enterprise IT architecture. It does not merely list the assets like a spreadsheet.
What does it do?
It maps the intricate web of relationships and dependencies between every single physical and digital component in the environment.
Because knowing you own a server is useless if you don't know what that server is doing.
Exactly. The CMDB understands the topology.
So it knows that virtual machine 001 is hosting the payroll database.
Right. It knows that VM is currently running on physical server BB000.
It knows that physical server is routing its traffic through network switch 003, and all of that hardware is physically located in server room 101.
Yes. So if the Change Advisory Board receives a request to take network switch 003 offline for a firmware update, they consult the CMDB.
And the database instantly alerts them that taking that switch offline severs the connection to the physical server,
Which drops the virtual machine.
which brings down the entire corporate payroll system.
Precisely. The CMDB provides the accurate, up-to-date relational logic required for auditing, compliance, and informed decision-making.
Wow. Okay, we have spent this entire deep dive constructing this massive digital fortress.
We have.
We have instituted CAB approvals to manage changes, we've planned for hurricanes and insider threats, and we have meticulously tracked every microchip in the CMDB.
But none of this infrastructure matters if the physical environment degrades the hardware.
Or worse, injures the human technicians maintaining it.
Exactly.
This brings us to the final critical dimension of the manual, the physical toll safety and environmental procedures.
This is where the abstract, logical world of software development collides with the brutal, unforgiving realities of physics and chemistry.
Yeah, the manual is unequivocal here. Operational efficiency never supersedes safety.
Technicians must adhere to stringent occupational health and safety standards, such as OSHA regulations, and the primary omnipresent hazard in a data center is electricity.
The absolute core mandate, repeated in the text, is to disconnect power before servicing any equipment.
It sounds fundamental. Obviously, unplug it. But the complacency of experienced technicians is a massive risk factor.
Because they've done it a million times.
Right. But you are dealing with high-voltage power supplies capable of delivering lethal amperage. The manual dictates the mandatory use of electrically insulated tools and requires technicians to actively test voltage levels with a multimeter before touching any internal components.
And work environments and hands must remain completely dry.
Yes, moisture and electricity are a deadly combination.
The text also touches on the built-in electrical safeguards, specifically defining the function of a fuse.
Now, we all know what a fuse is conceptually, but the manual frames it as a critical protection mechanism against cascading electrical failures.
It defines a fuse as a device that breaks the circuit automatically when the electrical flow exceeds safe, predetermined limits.
Right. It is designed to sacrifice itself, basically burning out its internal filament, to stop an overcurrent event from reaching and destroying the vastly more expensive processor down the line.
It takes the bullet.
It takes the bullet for the server. But electrical shock is only one of the physical hazards. The manual extensively details the chemical dangers present in standard IT environments.
Which is counterintuitive because an office or a server room doesn't look like a chemical laboratory.
No, it just looks like a bunch of beige and black boxes.
But the text lists highly toxic substances hidden in plain sight. Toner, batteries, cleaning solvents, and thermal coolants.
Let's talk about toner. Toner used in enterprise printers is often misunderstood as just dry ink.
I always thought it was just powder.
It is actually a microscopic, fine plastic particulate matter.
Plastic?
Yeah. If a toner cartridge explodes and those particles become airborne, it is a severe respiratory hazard. And it can actually combust if exposed to an ignition source.
Wow, okay. And what about batteries?
Server racks are filled with uninterruptible power supplies, which we talked about earlier. Those are packed with heavy-duty batteries containing highly corrosive acids and volatile heavy metals like lithium.
So how does a technician safely navigate these invisible chemical threats?
The manual dictates two primary defenses. First is the mandatory use of PPE.
Personal protective equipment.
Yes, including chemical-resistant gloves, safety goggles, and particulate masks when dealing with spills or maintenance.
And the second defense?
Strict adherence to the MSDS.
The material safety data sheets.
Exactly. Every single chemical compound in the facility must have an accompanying MSDS. These documents detail the exact chemical composition, the specific health hazards, and crucially, the exact procedures for safe cleanup and disposal.
You don't just throw a ruptured battery in the office trash can.
No. It must be stored in approved chemically neutral containers and disposed of through certified environmental recycling programs to prevent soil and water contamination.
While toxic chemicals are a known hazard, there is one environmental threat detailed in the manual that absolutely fascinates me because of how stealthy it is.
I think I know what you're going to say.
It is the invisible assassin of the IT world, ESD, electrostatic discharge.
Ah, yes. ESD is responsible for an incalculable amount of hardware destruction and lost troubleshooting hours.
Yes. The best way to visualize ESD is as a microscopic lightning strike.
That's a great visual.
We have all experienced static electricity. You walk across a carpeted room wearing socks in the middle of winter, you reach out to touch a metal doorknob, and you feel that tiny sudden zap on your fingertip.
To a human being, it is a minor annoyance.
Right.
But we have to understand the scale of modern microprocessors. The silicon pathways inside a CPU or a RAM module are measured in nanometers. They are unimaginably thin and fragile.
So when a technician carrying a static charge from walking across the room touches the gold contacts of a memory module without grounding themselves,
That tiny zap transfers into the silicon. To those microscopic pathways, that static discharge is the equivalent of a 1,000,000-volt lightning bolt striking a residential house.
wow.
The manual warns that ESD can instantly blow out the circuits and destroy the microchip entirely.
And the most insidious aspect of ESD is that it rarely leaves a visible scorch mark.
Exactly. The technician might not even feel the discharge. They install the destroyed component, close the server chassis, power it on, and the system is completely dead.
Or even worse, the text notes that ESD might not cause a catastrophic failure immediately.
Latent damage.
Yeah, it can cause latent damage. The static strike degrades the silicon just enough that the component continues to work for 3 months.
Slowly generating random, inexplicable memory errors before finally dying.
Turning the troubleshooting process into an absolute nightmare.
To prevent this, the manual lists exhaustive environmental and physical controls. The primary defense is the anti-static wrist strap and grounding mat.
A physical tether connecting the technician to the earth.
Precisely. The grounding strap provides a continuous, safe, low-resistance pathway for any static electricity building up on the technician's body to flow safely away from the sensitive hardware and directly into the ground.
The manual even dictates the technician's wardrobe.
It does.
It specifically warns against wearing wool or synthetic fabrics in work areas, as those materials are massive generators of static electricity.
And it mandates that technicians must only handle sensitive components by their extreme edges, avoiding any direct contact with the exposed circuitry or gold connectors.
But the most vital environmental control for preventing ESD has nothing to do with wrist straps. It is atmospheric control, specifically humidity.
Yes.
The manual is incredibly rigid on this metric. It states that the climate control systems must keep the relative humidity in the server room exactly around 40 to 60%, aiming for a Goldilocks zone of roughly 50%.
Yep.
Why is controlling the moisture in the air so critical to preventing static lightning?
It comes down to the physics of atmospheric conductivity. If the air in a room is incredibly dry, say below 30% humidity, which often happens in aggressively air-conditioned server rooms, or during winter months, the air acts as an insulator.
So the charge has nowhere to go.
Right. Static electrical charges build up on surfaces and bodies incredibly fast, and they have nowhere to go until they discharge into a microchip. Moisture in the air naturally dissipates those static charges before they can accumulate to dangerous levels.
So you want the room to be slightly damp to bleed off the static, but you can't just pump the room full of moisture, right? I mean, why not just go to 100% humidity?
No, because if you swing the pendulum too far and the humidity rises above 60 or 70%, you introduce a new, equally catastrophic threat: condensation.
Water on the servers.
Exactly. High moisture levels will eventually cause microscopic water droplets to form directly on the exposed electronics, leading to instant short circuits and massive corrosion of the metal contacts.
So that 40 to 60% range is the absolute sweet spot.
It contains enough moisture to naturally neutralize ESD, but is dry enough to prevent condensation, maximizing the lifespan and reliability of the hardware.
And humidity isn't the only atmospheric metric the manual focuses on. It extensively discusses controlling airborne dust.
Dust is a chronic enemy of thermodynamics.
Heat management.
Right. Enterprise servers generate enormous amounts of heat, and they rely on massive airflow to cool the processors. Airborne dust gets sucked into the intakes and coats the internal heat sinks.
Like a blanket.
That layer of dust acts exactly like a wool blanket, trapping the heat against the silicon, forcing the internal fans to run at maximum RPM, and eventually causing the system to suffer thermal throttling or total heat death.
The manual dictates strict cleaning protocols using compressed air and specialized anti-static vacuums to maintain thermal efficiency.
Yes.
Now, there is one final environmental protocol mentioned in the source material that I found fascinating because it bridges the gap between logistics and physics.
Acclimation.
Yes, the rule regarding acclimation. The manual states that you must let newly delivered equipment adjust to the room temperature before you are allowed to power it on.
It is a critical safeguard against thermal shock and condensation. Imagine an enterprise server is shipped across the country in the middle of January.
Okay, dead of winter.
Right. It sits in the back of an unheated delivery truck for 3 days in sub-zero temperatures. The metal chassis and the internal silicon are freezing cold.
If the IT department receives that box, immediately unpacks it, wheels it into the warm 50% humidity server room, and plugs it in to turn it on,
The ambient moisture in the server room will instantly condense on the freezing cold metal and silicon inside the machine, exactly like water droplets forming on the outside of a cold glass of ice water on a summer day.
wow. Yeah.
The moment the power hits the motherboard, the condensed water causes an instant catastrophic short circuit, destroying the machine before it ever boots up.
So you just have to wait.
The manual requires patience. The equipment must sit in the room, unpowered, for several hours to slowly acclimate to the ambient thermal environment.
The entire suite of safety and environmental protocols is designed to protect the people, preserve the capital investment of the equipment, and maintain a compliant, sustainable operating environment.
It's all connected.
When you step back and view the entirety of this deep dive, the sheer scale of interconnectedness is staggering. We started with a simple software update, and we have unpacked a massively complex, meticulously engineered ecosystem.
We really have.
It is an ecosystem where an anti-static wrist strap bleeding off microvoltage, a serialized barcode tracking a virtual machine in a global CMDB, a cross-departmental CAB debating the business impact of a Friday afternoon deployment, and a massive bank of UPS batteries bracing for a lightning strike, they are all operating in concert.
They all serve the exact same overarching directive.
Right.
They exist to maintain the illusion of seamless stability for the end user. They are the mechanisms that ensure when the world clicks update, the screen does not go black.
It is a monument to human engineering, anticipating every conceivable physical, digital, and environmental vulnerability.
It is impressive.
But reading through these exhaustively detailed procedures leaves me with one final lingering thought, and this is something for you listening right now to consider.
What is the vulnerability that stands out?
We just spent an hour exploring how enterprise operations attempt to brutally control every single variable in their environment. They control the atmospheric humidity to an exact 50% to prevent static. They barcode and track every single asset down to the specific slot in a schema rack.
Right.
They require multi-tiered approvals and peer reviews just to alter a single line of code.
They do.
But then we analyze the threat of the logic bomb. We analyze the insider threat.
Ah, yes.
If a catastrophic digital payload can be covertly planted and executed by a deeply trusted employee, someone who already possesses the highest level of security clearance, who already holds the authorized key card, and who is sitting in that perfectly humidified room wearing their grounding strap, are all of these meticulously tracked databases and rigid physical safety protocols actually creating a dangerous illusion?
It's a terrifying question.
Are we constructing an impenetrable, multi-million-dollar digital fortress only to ignore the terrifying reality that human trust remains the single most critical vulnerability that no amount of technology can ever patch?
It is the ultimate unsolvable paradox of systemic security. You can write algorithms to engineer against almost every environmental and digital threat.
But engineering a protocol against human nature is a fundamentally different, perhaps impossible, challenge.
It really is.
It is definitely something to contemplate the next time you swipe your badge at the office or trust a system update. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden operational procedures that power our world. Until next time, stay curious and always double-check those warranty clauses.